Hello everyone, I'm really excited to be here and to be able to talk to everyone. My mother-in-law is part of the Women's Club, and so that's how I kind of got introduced to everyone. And last May, I actually had the honor of being able to visit the DC office. And so I was very impressed at how much clout we can all hold together if we work together. And so I commend you all for doing so. Obviously, I'm a huge women's advocate. I always have been. Probably out in my department, there's about 280 engineers. There are only 6 females. So we have a long way to go. We've come far, but we do still have a long way to go. And so I'm always advocating, especially being a minority. I am Cherokee. My name is Gawon Daleha. And so, I know, you can't say that 5 times fast. But it's very important not only for women, but to overcome those barriers that people have in life and to be able to advocate and help them to do so. So in all actuality, even though I've gotten through the Mars 1 part, I've made part of this a way that I now have a public speaking forum that people are excited about with Mars 100, and I can also do some of that advocacy and show kids as well as adults that are in college that they can stick to it and they can be resilient and they too can succeed. You just have to keep trying and not let things stop you. So that's a little bit of what my presentation is actually about. So Mars or bust, my lifelong journey to the red planet. So everybody has goals and dreams in their lives, right? Well, I developed mine when I was really young. I was 8 years old. And you can go ahead to the next slide. So this is where I start. That is me at the Jackson Air and Space Museum in Michigan. I was 8 years old when I posed for that picture, and my dad took the picture. So I've always wanted to be an astronaut. I think one of the great things about growing up in Michigan in the Midwest is it's one of the few places you can really see the Milky Way stretched out. There's not much light pollution. There's also not much to do. So a very curious and tenacious and precocious child. An example, I grew up in Dorr, Michigan, D-O-R-R. I was positive Dorr was spelt D-O-R-R, and I knew it, and I told everyone that's how it was. So that was me at 8. So one of the great things about being Cherokee is we're matriarchal. So I grew up with very strong female role models. Our mothers are heads of family. And my father actually went to school at a young age, or I should say young age of 36, with 6 children. He was the first person in our family to go to school, and my mom helped put him through school. She had 2 full-time jobs, worked her butt off. Dad took care of us kids and studied. So I was lucky to be raised by my father and my mother. And when he got his degree in anthropology and behavioral sciences, I got to play in the anthropology lab. So my doll was dressing a skeleton named Twiggy in a lab coat. But that taught me a love of education, a love of science. And so those combined with my young aspirations of being an astronaut, but then also a large family, right? There's 6 of us. Well, sadly, I am the only one to go to college. So those barriers are really hard to overcome. But I'm so happy I did it. But one of the questions I had is, how do you become an astronaut? I was like, I wanted to be a pilot. I'll be a test pilot. Then I learned women didn't fly combat. They weren't allowed to. And I was like, okay, so now what do you do? Well, there were 4 women that were military pilots, and they were flying trainers and teaching. 4. And I was like, well, that's not very good odds. Luckily, 2 of those women became astronauts. One was a shuttle commander, and the other one was a commander of the International Space Station. So yeah, but there wasn't much there. So I said, okay, I'll be a commercial. I'll go the commercial route, be a pilot. I didn't quite know what I wanted to do in engineering, but I did know that I wanted to take engineering as the route, because that's what most astronauts were. But as you can see, it was kind of like plug and check, I had no idea. Most people didn't. NASA didn't have a straight line. They said, okay, we select people with these qualities and that's it. You know, it wasn't like you go to school to be an astronaut. So it was really difficult sometimes. Go ahead, next slide. So I went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. That's the only place I applied. Once again, I'm precocious and determined to get in because that's the only place I wanted to go. Sometimes that's a bit naive, but I got lucky and I got in. So I did a Bachelor's of Science in Aeronautical Science, which means it's aircraft systems and navigation sciences was my major, and I went through all my pilot certifications. I decided to diversify, so I got a minor in safety, aircraft accident investigation, and I did meteorology as well. And then because a lot of times when you're a pilot, you lose your medical or you have a heart murmur or diabetes, you don't get to fly anymore, not commercially. So it's one of those things where I always had backups and I always tried to diversify myself. Next slide. And then I decided I didn't want to fly an autopilot. Nowadays, how you fly an airplane is you literally turn the dial and press enter. I am so hyper. Plus, I drive my co-pilot nuts. He'd be like, is this girl ever quiet? I'm like, no. But I said one of the things that I realized when I was working at American Airlines that we had a lot of problems with human factors. We had a lot of problems with safety, and these are all due to operator interface design. And I found my calling in engineering. I love people. I love psychology, but yeah, I'm a technical, analytical person. So my degree, Human Factors and Systems Engineering, combines psychology with engineering to design operator interfaces for people and to optimize how you use anything. I can design a chair, I can design a building, I can design a flight deck. And so this is like human factors engineering is to understand how people use cognition, how they think, and understand how they move in the world and everything, and to design those interfaces so that you can use them effectively, proficiently, and you actually like it. I don't know how many of you have your cell phone and it's so annoying at first, right? Yeah, it's not always good design, but they try their best. So one of the things that I wanted, once again, is to do long-duration space flight and habitation modules. So I did my master's degree in those focuses, all my projects on long-duration space flight. But once again, I had a backup. It was automation design, which is good because do you know how many jobs there are in long-duration space flight and habitation modules? Not very many. Especially now with the shuttle gone. Oh, I was a shuttle era child. I remember watching the shuttle go up all the time. Always watched it, even in school, even when the shuttle blew up. You know, most kids were stunned. We started crying, and I thought they were the bravest people in the world for doing what they loved and having the courage to do it. And so that explains a little bit on my outlook and why I decided I'm going to Mars. Next slide. So I had a roundabout career. One of those things where, I got to design the Navy flight deck for Advanced Hawkeye. It's a battle management and air traffic control platform. Really exciting, one of my first cockpits. Unfortunately, the picture isn't so clear, but at Textron Systems, I was doing unmanned aerial vehicles and ground control stations. You guys might hear them called drones. Only the media calls that for sensationalism, just so you know. We call them unmanned aerial vehicles. But that was one of the aircraft that I designed, and the man on the left is my husband. I met my husband there, and he's an aerodynamicist. Then I went off to do en route air traffic control design for Lockheed Martin, and that was really interesting because one, I did design for a Navy battle management platform, and now I was doing design for the Navy or for the FAA, which is completely different. One, you have some very high-skilled quality training, and the other, air traffic controllers can be a high school diploma, and then they go through very extensive training. So very different mindsets and type of people that you're trying to design for. So it was very, very exciting. And then I decided I didn't want to be a contractor anymore. So I went into Rockwell Collins and I started doing advanced technology development and design. So before I was always in production, always designing, for a particular for a particular project, and now I design advanced technology. So I took that very diverse background doing unmanned systems, air traffic control, aircraft, flight deck design, and automation, and now I apply that to technology design and automation. And so that's how I got into doing a sonic boom display for commercial supersonic transport and unmanned systems, and now I have patents and publications for simplification for autoflight and stuff. So, it's one of those things where I learned that I don't really say no. There are times where I may not necessarily want to do what I get asked, or I may not, think I can do it sometimes, but I just take a deep breath. And my mom always told me, one step at a time, break it into small pieces and just keep going. And so that's what I've always done. And that kind of, is one of litany for just about everything I've done in my life. Give an example, we were very poor growing up. 6 kids, Native American, we're Cherokee, we don't have a lot. And sometimes it was even hard to buy clothes. I had my first job at 13, so I could buy my own school clothes because we couldn't afford it. So it's one of those things that you grew up very independent and resilient, and I had to find my own way to college because I didn't have a way to get from Michigan to Florida. So luckily during orientation, I met a girl, her dad lived in Michigan, she lived in Wisconsin, and so I hitched a ride with him as he went to pick her up, and I got to Florida. My mom gave me $20, and that's all we had, and she helped me buy everything I needed at the dollar store at Family Dollar, and I had a duffel bag and $20 at 18 years old, and I went to Florida on my own. And I had to find a full-time job quick to eat. So that's one of those things where it pays to take risks. But along the way, there is support. My family loved me very much. Even though they couldn't provide a lot, they are always there when I had hard times. So I tell kids, I like to volunteer and give mentorship, because just having somebody to talk to and help you pick yourself up every time that you get down is worth more than any dollar. Way more than any dollar. Next slide. So, a few things that I learned along the way. I said, don't be afraid of risk. Believe me, I was scared to death to go to Florida on my own. And it was even worse because Cherokee culture, most of us don't go to college because we're too busy getting a job to take care of our families. So it was really hard for me to leave my family. All of my siblings still live at home with my father. So, it's very hard. Well, except for my brother who has 5 daughters. I told him the odds were against him. But, it's one of those things where it's really hard to leave. And then a lot of times, because of they get laid off or whatever, a lot of kids nowadays are moving back in with their parents because they just can't afford it. But it's also okay to follow a different path. I'm a non-standard kid. It's like I was dressing skeletons in lab coats. Also, while all the girls were reading Cosmo, I was reading about the cosmos. So I've never fit those molds. I also, most girls in class were meek and everything, and I was like, nope, I know how to do it, and this is how you do it. And my parents always used to get back these comments that Laura's really smart. She gets good grades, and my parents were like, but what? She was right, wasn't she? And they're like, well, she's bossy. My parents are like, that's leadership and assertiveness. So that's another thing you overcome as girls. Even in workplace now, my boss is like, well, you have a lot of conflict. I said, no, I know how to bring up the conversations and deal with the conflict instead of letting it fester. People avoid it. I don't. It's like the positive way to approach things and solve problems. But I'm different. So I was like, that's okay. And I learned how to meet people eye to eye. Being Cherokee is a very different culture. Like I said, we're socially oriented, not individually oriented. We do things for the team. We forsake ourselves a lot, which is not always good either. But I learned in school, people called me Pocahontas. They laughed at my long, straight hair because it was the 80s. Nobody had long or straight hair. Mine does not curl. So And I was like, you know what, that's okay. But I learned how to relate to others, and I learned to say, you know what, I'm not really that different. And that has helped me everywhere I go. I work with so many people from different cultures and different parts of the world. And one of my software engineers is from the Netherlands. And you know, it's being that conscious and understanding how they tick and how you relate to them. And that gets you much better in the world. So it taught me a lot of good lessons. The other thing is you define what success is. Now, there are people that have probably achieved way more than I have, but they didn't start where I did. And so I feel that every time I succeed, every time I go out and I do what I wanted to do, that is success. I don't let others define success for me. I know where I came from. I know what I had to go above and do, and I know what I want. And that defines my success. But not only that, I know how I want to go about getting there. In the business world, it's hard. It's cutthroat. There's a lot of people out there who don't work like a team. I don't do that. Integrity is very important to me. Don't play games, don't want the drama. Sometimes it's hard. But that's how I go about it. So that's how I determine my own success. And so a lot of times I don't care what other people think. There are times where sometimes I do fall into the trap, you know, and see myself and others and get criticized or whatever, but I try and at least take it constructively. But that was my life lessons. The other thing I learned is you live it now. You spend your whole life dreaming for something that may or may not ever happen. Meanwhile, the life you have now and the opportunities you have now, past. They're gone because you were too busy wishing you had something that wasn't even may exist or not. And so whatever I do, I try and make it a passion. I try and enjoy it, and I try to love what I do. If I don't, I move on. I go find something that I really want to live for. So maybe we'll get to Mars, maybe we won't, but the journey is going to be amazing, and I'm willing to take it. Next slide. And that gets me to my statement. So getting to Mars is a lot like realizing your dreams. It's a very long journey. It's filled with opportunity windows. Literally, there's a window to get to Mars every 2 years, which is why the missions are every 2 years. If you miss that window, the planets aren't aligned and you can't get there until the next 2 years. It's a moving target. They don't stay stationary. A lot of times your dreams and the things you want change. I mean, many of you had kids, right? Well, that changes everything. And generally, you make that as a conscious decision, but not always. And that's okay. So your dreams will morph and change. So that's something that I've learned. I learned that I thought I was really ambitious. And then I realized it really wasn't what I wanted, like being that commercial airline pilot. It was nice, but I'm not a button pusher. Thank goodness I learned that sooner rather than later. But the exhilaration of the discoveries you make once you get there are going to be amazing. So it's all about the journey, in my viewpoint. Okay, candidate selection process. This is the kind of like the fun part. One day, my husband came home and he said, "Do you want to go to Mars?" And I went, "Yeah." And he's like, "Great, we're applying." And so my husband, who's known that I wanted to be an astronaut since I was 8, saw the Mars One solicitation online. And we sat down and we applied, and it was rather rigorous. I've applied for NASA every single astronaut selection since my master's degree, so that was like in 2002. Ever since I've qualified, I have applied for NASA. And, you know, it's kind of rigorous in a way. You have to do your resume, and there's a bunch of medical stuff they ask you, but that's about it. They have 3,000 to 4,000 people, and I have never gotten selected, but I have all my rejection letters, and I have those hopes. So this time I was like, oh, I looked online, they said, oh, over 200,000 people are applying. And I went, wow, well, we'll try again. And so we had about 6 essays to write. Essays that asked, well, how do you deal with fear? What are you afraid of? A lot of psychological things. Tell us about a situation you had to get yourself out of. Well, as a pilot, I've had a few of those. As students, we get ourselves into so much trouble. And so we filled those out, and then we had to do the normal resume and everything, and then the next step was we had to do a video. And so that's a picture from my video, which I did at the last minute in my friend's closet with my husband taking it. And we had to tell things about why do we want to go to Mars, what do you think we could achieve, why we are the person for it. So it was actually a rather involved selection process. And then about a year later, we found out whether or not we had made it. So out of, I think it was almost 260 by that time who applied for that, to be an astronaut. They only selected about 2,400 out of all of those people. My husband didn't make it. Yeah, we were very sad. But then all of a sudden, I made it. So, this whole thing has been a little bit of mixed feelings. It's like, oh, I'm so excited I made it, but you didn't, so it's kind of hard. And so we sat down, and he's like, well, let's see how far you can go. And we're like, okay, let's see how far I can go. So round 2, this is where we had our 10-minute interview. In order to do this interview, we also had to submit a medical affidavit from our doctor. We had to make our profiles open publicly because training was going to be a reality TV show. Yeah, I was like, okay, that'll be interesting. I'm pretty open, but I tell you what, only my husband knows me that well. So then the 10-minute interview, they gave us about 30 pages of technical data. And this was stuff on the roadmap to Mars, this is on radiation hazards, this was on the climate of Mars, how you get there, how long it takes, all this stuff. And from that 30 pages, they asked 3 questions. That's a lot. But they gave us a month to study it. But mine's a little bit more interesting because they had a glitch in their system, and I was supposed to have my interview at 11 a.m. on my brother's birthday. I chose that for good luck. It's my little brother. We're only 9 months apart, and I love him dearly. But 2 people at the same time had gotten that spot, and so the system threw one out. It was mine they threw out. So I had to reschedule, and I rescheduled, but I got the time zones wrong. So now my interview was at 1 a.m. in the morning. I was so tired. They asked 6 questions. I sort of flubbed one, but I had the right general answer. But I will always remember that how much radiation you get going to Mars was 386 millisieverts. But it was great. One of the wonderful things is I got to meet Norbert Kraft. Now, if you guys don't know who Norbert Kraft is, he's kind of a legend in psychology and astronaut selection. He's done a lot of Mars isolation studies. He himself was in isolation through one of these Mars studies because he wanted to see what it was like. And so he does a lot of basically the psychology of isolation, but also living together in different cultures and male-female dynamics and organizational behavior. So I was really excited, and I was a groupie. I was like, I'm so excited to meet you. So I got through that. And the cool thing is I made it again. I was like, wow, okay, so I was really tired. Not at my best, and I made it. So I was very excited about that. And then the media started knocking on the door. Matter of fact, some of you might have seen the video, the ABC News video, and then this flowered shirt. Well, I thought that was the FedEx guy. I saw the blue jacket, and I wasn't expecting the whole public figure, and I have been a public figure now. So I looked out my window because I work from home. I saw the blue jacket. I went downstairs. I opened the door, and there was a camera, and I said, "Oh, hi." Impromptu. Once again, this is me. You got it. If you don't love it, well, it's me. I love it. So you gotta love yourself. But that was very fun. So I started kind of doing the circuit, but I got this wonderful avenue to get people excited about Mars. I mean, one of the big things about going to Mars is it's kind of like the next step for mankind. And with Mars One, it's the world going to Mars. It's not NASA, it's not the United States, it's not European Union. It literally are people from all over the world. It's one of the few things I've ever seen people pull behind and actually do. So much that NASA has changed the direction of where they're going with their space program. My VP in my department is one of the industrial advisors for strategic directions for NASA. And he said in that meeting, they asked, why are we going to an asteroid? Why do we want to go to the moon? People are excited about Mars. We should go to Mars. So NASA has put out all kinds of solicitations for research on long-duration space flight. They just 2 months ago did a demonstration of an inflatable habitat for Mars. And they started doing all kinds of research on space vehicles and everything, so they're changing their direction. This shows you what this type of excitement and crowdsourcing can do. If we want to do it, we have to be excited about it and we have to tell people about it. So that's why I'm here sharing it with you guys. Round 3 is a group challenge. That's in September. And so that's the next step, and then after that we go through group training. So next slide, I'll talk a little bit about the challenges of getting to Mars. I'm not sure how much time I have, so I don't want to keep it too long. I'm good?
I'd say another 5 minutes.
Okay, so crew training. Skills we're going to get is technical, medical, geology, exobiology, physiotherapy, electronics, and psychology. Some of those I already have, but that's why we have 10 years for training. They're really looking for the type of people that can survive in extreme environments. And then we'll look at personal ability to cope with the environment. So that's one of the very first things for the next 10 years until 2026. And then by 2028, the first crew of 4 people will get there. Next slide. So getting to Mars. We've been 90% successful in the last 20 years. Before that, I don't even want to tell you our success rate. Hasn't been pretty. But robotics and unmanned systems has made us so much more successful, and it's only getting better. Curiosity is amazing. What the rover has done and done experiences and just studying the geology and possible riverbeds and all that. So we've come a long way when it comes to that. They're going to launch 2 satellites. One will be at Mars and one will be in between Mars. This way, if you have occlusions from the sun or the Earth, we can still communicate. It can take an average of 6 minutes to 2 hours, depending on where Mars is in its orbit in relationship to Earth, to communicate. And then there's an Outpost site. So in 2020, the first lander and ComSat satellite goes out. The first lander is going to look for water, so that we can find a place where we can actually build our habitats. Lockheed Martin right now is doing a study on the lander to figure out what kind of lander to build. Then 2022, another rover goes out with all kinds of life support systems. So everything that we need will be built for the first crew before we get there. It's the idea. Oxygen, water, all that will be stored up along with energy. And then it says 2024, the cargo and the second rover will go out. And then after that, I said 2026, the first crew of 4. And you guys get to select that on the reality TV show. So it'll be very interesting. You get to select the first 4 crew members. Next slide. So Mars Outpost has a life support unit. So you have electrical energy through solar panels, potable water with heating from ice and soil. And I'm showing these pictures here because that's a crater with ice in it. So there is water on Mars. We've known that for quite a while. So there's water in the permafrost. Even on the Curiosity rover, it's had condensation. The amusing thing is it has corrosive salt in it. So that'll be very interesting to see how it handles with the equipment. And then we're going to be living in space inflatables. So everything we can get there between nitrogen and argon is already in the atmosphere, and we're going to get oxygen from the water. Next slide. Transit. Oh, so the trip is going to be about 210 days in a tin can. There's solar flares, so they're using the water. You have to crawl in to where the water, so they have containment in water that you bring with you, and that will help shield you from radiation. So you crawl into a little hole with all that water around you. You have to sit in the water. It's in the can. Some people ask me that. I was like, no. But at least the container is shielding you from that radiation. 4 people might have to do that. Might have to sit in that for 3 days in that small little area when you have solar flares. You have solar flares about every 3 to 4 months. And so you're going to go through quite a few of those. So the first crew is going to bring all the cargo for the second crew. And that's your job, is to put that together when you get there for the second 4 people who are going to come. Next slide. Settling in. So it's 48 hours of adaptation because you're in weightlessness, right? And so you go to Mars, so all your bones have atrophied in that 210 days. Mars has 1/3 gravity, so it's a little bit easier. But now you have to get used to the world spinning around you again. Because before it wasn't. And all that fluid in your ears, you sit down. Astronauts don't always walk off their landers. Usually they're carried. I think Shannon Lucid was the very first person that was able to keep enough muscle mass through exercise and actually walk out of her capsule. But they get vertigo because all that time you spend in space, your fluid in your ear that makes you turn left and right and know which direction that you're pointed, it hasn't moved. It's in weightlessness. Well, now Mars is spinning. So guess what you feel like? You feel like you're spinning. So there's an adaptation period. Next slide. Living on Mars. Okay, 250 cubic meters. I think of my cat and what she gets to live in my house. And I think if she can do it, I can do it. But we do have to protect from radiation. So what you see in the mounds behind these big containers, the containers are the life support units, the mounds are where you live. So you put about 5 meters of soil on you to help protect you from the radiation because Mars' atmosphere is thin. It doesn't provide as much protection as the Earth's atmosphere does. But you also have sandstorms. So that's a dust devil, and it looks really small, but it's really, really, really big. Dust storms on Mars can cover half the planet. And at that time, you have to have energy reserves because you get most of your energy from solar power. So you have batteries and you have to restrict everything, including water. And so this will last for maybe a month at a time sometimes. So those are the things that you have to think about when you're living on Mars. Next slide. Daily life. That's an example of what the room will look like. So what you're really doing is you exercise because you want to maintain muscle mass, 1/3 gravity. It gets hard. We are human guinea pigs when we're out there. See what happens if we live without that much gravity. The other thing is we have research that we're going to be doing for people back on the Earth. They already have universities who sent up research ideas and have been in a competition to have their research needs on the first mission. Then a lot of it is maintenance. There's going to be a lot of things you have to do on your own. Things break, especially if they're critical. You're going to have to repair them yourself. I want a 3D printer. I don't know if you guys have heard about the 3D printers that you can build with resin. I want to bring one with me. I'll find a material on Mars to make everything. Then a lot of construction, growing food, and you do have free time. You'll get email. You know, you just have to download everything you want to see real time from the server. So, you know, you'll get game scores late. You know, so you will have contact. The contact with your family is going to be via video, you know, because it's just too long to wait for a phone call. So you do have free time. And the thing is, I like to garden, I like to read, I like to play music. I want to bring my harmonica and my flute with me. Things like that, you know, will be fairly normal. Next slide. Aha, candidate agreement. This is Bas Lansdorp. He's a billionaire who set up this nonprofit organization in the Netherlands called the Mars One. And so he is really big. He's on the ship of the Starship Enterprise for the new movie that's coming out. So he's a huge time trekker. And he wanted to send us a personal note that we are now astronaut candidates. We represent Mars One in our selection, and he wished us all really good luck and commended us for our risk-taking. We haven't taken too many risks yet, so we'll see when we get there. But we all had to sign a candidate agreement. And once we are selected, we will become employees of Mars One, and we will go into astronaut training. This is all very similar to what NASA does nowadays. Next slide. So, next steps. 5 days, down select 40 candidates. All 100 candidates will get together. Can you imagine 100 people who all are excited about going to Mars in the same room? I think it's going to be like this huge emotional high to get to meet all those people. So I'm really looking forward to that. But you have to down select into teams, about 10 to 15. And what they want to do, this is part of the challenge, they want to see how you deal with people of very diverse. So the whole idea is to down select in the most diverse team you can. And then they give you group challenges, all the leadership things. I don't know if some of you have ever done some of the leadership training. You know, sometimes they have one person that has a blindfold and, you know, everybody else has a blindfold and one person doesn't, and you have to direct them and those type of, that's similar. They haven't told us exactly what we're going to have to do, but I'm very looking forward to it. And the wonderful thing is my mother-in-law did tons of leadership training for the church, and she used to train a whole bunch of volunteers. So she gave me her book of leadership training. So I'm going to go through it. And there's some really awesome training that's in there. But then they're going to pull out, I think it was 10 people at a time. And then the next one is 9 days. You're going to down select to 30 candidates. And this is where you go into isolation to see how you deal in isolation. But not only that, how you deal with those people that you down selected into in isolation. So it's people, you know how it is. If somebody drives you nuts, you can get away. You can't get away on Mars. They are always going to be there. And 230 cubic meters per person, they're going to be there. So there's a lot of things that I would imagine that I will learn about myself that I never knew. But they also want to ask you very personal questions. And so I'm not exactly sure what those questions are going to be. They haven't told us. I guess it's another one of those challenges is they don't tell you all. But they're going to get very deep and personal and get to know you really well. And so that's kind of like I said before, my husband's the only one that knows me all that well. So this is one of those things where you really have to be open and honest in how well you work with people. And then multiple challenges and more tests and study material. So it's pretty well involved. And next slide. Then we get down to 24. And this is a 4-hour interview. I've had 4-hour interviews before. They're not fun. And a lot of this is really, once again, it's a psychological interview. They're really trying to get down to the nitty-gritty and see who you are and whether or not you're the type of person who can be resilient and positive and step up to challenge, be a team, and in my opinion, know when to follow as well as when to lead. And so that's one of those, I'm a little nervous about all this judgment and decision making. I want to know what that test is going to be. But yeah, it's stressful working conditions because you know what? You go out of Mars habitat, you can never ever go outside without your spacesuit. You will never ever again feel the wind on your skin. Never be able to smell fresh air. So there are certain things that you really have to see if you can handle. I love the ocean. I scuba dive. I have a 150-gallon reef aquarium. My husband has lovingly adopted my hobby. That's going to be wow. But I can imagine there's amazing discoveries on Mars. And the first picture on the slide was the Mars sunset. It's absolutely gorgeous. And that's the beginning, not the end. And this is the Mars sunrise. Yeah.
Great.
Great.